In a field with numerous defeated bodies, the timer shows 36 minutes left. The protagonist, looking at the blade, says he was a lifeless corpse and now has only half an hour left. He walks away, stabbing the bodies, saying he must stay calm because there's still plenty of time. With the end of this war, he's there in that desolate scene looking for someone alive. Like other reincarnated ones, he had a painful and irrational death in his past life, and now he has been reborn in a world of abundance with various creatures and monsters. The problem is that the life he's living in this world is quite different from other stories. At this moment, a guy groaning nearby catches his attention. Trembling, he asks for help, saying it hurts a lot. The protagonist grits his teeth and finishes him off without hesitation. With this, the timer jumps to 20 hours and 58 minutes. The protagonist says that since the guy was just a common farmer, he didn't even have 20 hours left. Suddenly, someone appears, saying they were wondering who was the big problem. Stepping on the head, he says that apparently he's the source of everything and approaches, saying it's always good to kill the victors on the battlefield. He questions the protagonist if he also enjoys this feeling, while he wonders who this guy is. As he gets closer, the guy says he's a newbie and introduces himself as Stephen. He tells the protagonist that he just killed one of his toys and prepares an attack, saying that now he'll have to pay the price. The blow lands squarely, but the protagonist defends himself, being thrown backward. Realizing that the guy is quite strong in a second, he has to defend himself again, and Stephen acknowledges that he is talented. Seeing him up close, Stephen gets curious and says that his face is young and healthy. It would be great to play with. He even licks him, saying he's very excited, get lost you crazy. He was cut in half before finishing his sentence. Our protagonist doesn't know what happened. A guy with a giant axe says he knew that pervert would be around here again. The guys in the background comment that the boy is crazy for having fought against someone who is on the wanted list. The one with the green beard asks if he's okay and says he should be grateful or he'd be dead. However, the protagonist advances with a blade and finishes off Stephen on the ground, and starts begging for the guy to die by his hands while the others think he's out of his mind. The guys say it looks more like desperation than anger, and the timer went to 127 hours. The protagonist falls sitting, grateful that the guy wasn't completely dead. Looking at Stephen, he finds it ridiculous that the guy thought killing people was fun. He's not an adrenaline junkie psychopath like this guy was. He's only doing this because of his timer, which when it reaches 0, he dies. And the only way to increase this timer is by taking a person's life with his own hands. However, even now after countless battles, when he has to kill someone, his body still trembles and his heart races. Meanwhile, the guy with the axe just observes and tells him to join the squad. The guy with the eye patch asks why, and the captain responds that he defended himself against Stephen, so he has potential. From the ground, the protagonist asks if becoming a mercenary will make it easier to deal with people's deaths. The guy says it's an interesting question, but apart from psychopaths like Stephen, no one gets used to doing something like this. He doesn't have to get used to killing others. He just has to accept that his life is more important than theirs, and like any other form of life in this world, keep trying to get stronger. They say they don't want to live this way because they want to, but because it's the only way out, and tells the protagonist to get up quickly. And the guys in front of him say they don't like this job much either, but it's what they have to do. While the protagonist thinks he doesn't want to live depending on others' deaths, they get up, and the guys ask what his name is. He was about to say it's Louis something but stops and asks to be called. Just Louis, and none of these guys know that he's the man who needs to kill to stay alive. In an inn on a rainy day, an attendant says he knows the Soul Collector and is someone you can't forget even if you want to. It was a month ago, and he saw with his own eyes the scene on the battlefield. What he saw was obviously a knight, but one who used a different kind of power called Ether, and everyone knew him as the Chosen One. Everyone already knows, but the existence of a true knight is already the definition of fear for any warrior in combat. And no one can keep up with the movements of a human who uses ether. Even being sliced like cheese, they did not flee from the battle. After all, they had a plan for that and fired a flare, and Louis found out something was about to happen. What appeared was Lord Jackson and the 8 chosen knights of Viscount Beora, known as the Black Mist Cavalry. Since the only ones who could kill a strong knight are even stronger knights, especially the second in command, Lord Nell, who was the first to enter the fight. Even though his opponent was the Soul Collector, no one thought Nell would lose that battle, until the moment his blade was destroyed and he was cut into pieces. A situation no one would have ever imagined happened in half a second. And at that moment, the Soul Collector said something the old man remembers very well. I've increased my lifespan enough, and I'm going to use 1,000 hours. Lend me your strength, God of War Long. With this, something unbelievable happened. The Black Mist Cavalry, the elite force of Viscount Beora, was decimated in 30 seconds. All they could do after that was retreat. When he looked back, all he saw was the Soul Collector bathed in blood staring at them. You could see in his eyes that it wasn't enough. The hooded guy then asks if he just called on the God of War, and that's it. The old man says yes, he doesn't know much about the guy. He then throws some coins thanking him for the information. The guy is leaving when the vendor says he will say the boy's name, but the hooded one says he knows very well. Louis de Rossi, or the one known as the Soul Collector, someone who became very famous recently. and right now he must be celebrating with his comrades the end of another battle. In another place, people toast to the victory, and everyone is excited and drinking while Louis is there in the background. At this moment, he has 1,000 hours and 42 minutes but thinks it's not enough. Even after so many battles, he doesn't know when he will be free from this. Slumped in the chair, he sighs, saying he only has half a month so he can't even rest. But it doesn't matter since this is better than his past life, as in the previous world he was destined to die without being able to do anything. In bed, all he wished for was to be reborn with a healthy body, and in a way, that happened. But he was brought to this terrible fantasy world. That damned god apparently never read a story that could have brought him to a world where he had to kill someone like a farmer who would increase his lifespan by about a day. This means that to live half a year, he needs to kill 180 people, but he still has to consider travel time. He slams his mug on the table, saying it's impossible. He's not some kind of prodigy assassin. Suddenly, someone slams the table calling for Louis. The chubby guy asks why he is so serious, and Louis wants to know why he is so drunk. Excited, the guy says you never know when you'll die in this job, so you have to enjoy it as much as possible. Someone approaches, saying he should have fun too while the others are in a good mood, and the boss says that if he stays down like this, he will spoil everyone's fun. In the background, the guys tell him to tell the story of how he defeated those enemies. The boss makes a serious face and asks Louis how he really beat those guys. After all, to be honest, those knights were more than qualified for that battlefield. Especially the guy named Nell, who was considered one of the few master level ones. Louis is a bit unsure of what to say since he doesn't want to talk about it. So he says it was luck that those guys weren't as strong as their reputation said. The boss questions the luck factor and says they are not fools. 4 other skilled guys from their band died to Nell, so they were sure the guy was strong, and asked Louis what he is hiding from his comrades. Louis stays silent for a moment. Then he says he was kidding, and they should listen carefully. He starts telling the story, saying that the truth is he fought putting his whole life on the line. The guys are confused, asking what he's talking about, and they throw a bunch of mugs, telling him to stop being sick, and that everyone who goes into combat puts their life at risk. He stands up, saying it's a personal matter, and that they should respect it because they keep asking so much about it. The green-bearded Chief Terran says he wants to talk to him. Louis stands up, and the chief tells him to come back before the drinks run out, asking where the camaraderie is. With that, they go to the chief's room. However, suddenly, the guy with the eye patch tells everyone to stop drinking and gather only those who are knights. The chubby guy asks why, and the guy says it's time to work. Something is bothering him. Louis opens the door to the room and asks the chief what it is. Excited, Terran says he's been fighting too well and never imagined that the soldier he found on the battlefield would become so strong. He tells him to sit and celebrate with him, and Louis feels a bit embarrassed. The captain asks about the first time he joined the group, and Louis tells him to just say what he wants. After all, he's never refused any of the missions. The captain says that's true, but they have to celebrate a bit before moving on to the next one, and hopes everything's okay with him. He hands him a drink, saying it's a new alcohol that recently arrived. Louis drinks it, and the chief thanks him. Then he tells him that thanks to his actions, Biora even declared that he's going to surrender. The only problem is they haven't been able to resolve everything officially yet because Biora has to pay compensation. However, some moments ago, Biora requested to meet with one of their employees. Louis said that Biora probably wants to fight more, and the chief agrees, saying he imagines he wants to kill everyone. And that's why the chief asked Louis to go to a meeting where Biora is going and protect him because they can't let Biora die before they get paid. Louis asks why they requested him officially if it's a bodyguard mission. Terran says he feels safer assigning this mission to him. He hands him a paper saying the location is written there. The chief was going to explain the reward, but Louis is already leaving the room. He says they'll discuss the reward later because the other members are waiting for him. The chief smiles, saying that's true, so go celebrate. The scene shifts to a forest. Crouched in the mist, Louis thinks about how the nobles used them on the battlefield as weapons while resting calmly at home. It's been 10 years since he arrived in this world, and he still hasn't gotten used to taking people's lives. He approaches, seeing a figure, and asks if it's Viscount Biora by any chance. However, he notices someone behind him as well. Suddenly, he's surrounded by 5 people and realizes it's a trap, but that reminds him of a bad memory. Seeing the armor, he says they look like knights who work for Viscount Biora. By chance, are they here to avenge the comrades who died? Already drawing his blade, he says it doesn't matter since killing knights gives more lifetime than farmers. He then activates the power in the blade. However, suddenly he spits blood, falling to the ground, asking what's happening. All he did was try to use ether. This has never happened before, so what was it? Remembering what he consumed, it could only have been that alcohol earlier. As he's about to be finished off, he thinks that it's not just him who's in danger if this happened. All of his allies will die too, but suddenly he's struck by 2 blades. He agonizes, and when the guy pulls the blade out, Louis falls to the ground, thinking to himself that he has to be quick to save his allies. While the guy says it's amazing that even the legendary Soul Collector can't win against ether poison. It's the guy with the eye patch saying he spent a lot of money on this poison, so it was worth it. The chubby guy next to him asks Louis not to hold grudges and says they didn't want to do this either. Louis asks if they were all bought by Viscount Biora and are there to collect his head. Trying to get up, he says that if Terra knew what they were doing, but the guy tells him not to say something so ridiculous. The person who put poison in his drink and the one who planned all this was Taran himself. Louis is in disbelief that it was Taran who planned everything. Recalling the memories, he is sure they were allies. He then smiles, saying that apparently only he thought so. One of them is about to decapitate him while he thinks about how much he hates this fantasy world. He stops the blade with his own hand and calls for the system. With 1,000 hours and 27 seconds left, he informs the system that he will use the 1,000. The system confirms his request, stating that all time will be processed together. With that, his time starts to decrease, and the eye patch guy's blade is already destroyed. Standing up, the guy says it's impossible, that he shouldn't be able to use either. The system activates Lom's first blessing, which makes him not feel pain in combat. Smiling, Louis says they were curious to know how he defeated Biora's knights, right? Lom's second blessing activates, increasing his strength tenfold and his muscle resistance fiftyfold. The eye patch guy is in disbelief while Louis says they thought he was joking. The third blessing, which regenerates part of his injuries, also activates. Louis then says he wasn't joking, it was all true. The fourth blessing activates, replacing all the ether in his body with the divine power of the god of war. With 16 seconds left, Louis breaks the blade with his hand, warning that now his entire life is on the line. The system notifies him that he has 15 seconds. The chubby guy orders them to attack him before he grabs any weapon. But Louis smiles, asking why he thinks he has no weapon. He sees himself on the battlefield of the god of war. While under divine protection, he can use one of Lom's weapons. He approaches what seems to be a giant sword, and when he grabs it, the system says it's the god's throwing dagger. And 4 seconds are used as payment. With that, time starts ticking. With 8 seconds left, the god's dagger appears in his hand. The eye patch guy is startled, wondering what kind of dagger that is. He wants to ask when that happened, but a red flash has already passed through everyone. In an almost incomprehensible move, Louis says he wants to ask one thing. What was he to these guys? The eye patch guy says he's asking something too emotional. Did he expect him to answer that they were family, while everyone else has been cut in half? And glowing red, Louis' time has increased to 500 hours. Lom's dagger is retrieved and the divine protection is removed. The power is cancelled because his body is too exhausted. He spits blood and falls to the ground, saying that this god of war buff is crap. No matter how many battles he wins, he's always on the verge of dying. He wonders if everyone in Taran's squad betrayed him. He gets up, saying he's sure at least one person wouldn't betray him. But he's startled as he approaches. The entire place is in flames and everyone is dead on the ground. Crawling on the ground, someone asks why he came back. It's the guy from the counter saying Taran betrayed everyone. He's about to say he made a deal with Biora when he's cut in half. Taran emerges from the flames, saying it's amazing that he drank a bottle of ether poison and still came back intact. Approaching, he says he might have underestimated or overestimated his members. And Louis responds that he's a crazy bastard. Why did he kill all of his allies if the goal was just to kill him? Lifting his axe, Taran asks about the word allies, and tells Louis that today he didn't kill any of his allies. He only removed the barricades blocking his path. Louis asks what business is this about blocking the path? All those were people who followed his leadership. Taran says that since he's the last one, he'll tell him about the deal he made with Biora. If he leaves this damn squad, he'll receive the title of noble. But he knew he'd be hunted if he left these crazies behind. Louis understands the plan immediately and asks if that's why they were eliminated. Taran says it's hard to believe he was a nobody, considering how smart he is. Sometimes he even wonders if the boy was a noble. Louis asks if that's all he has to say, and suddenly attacks him, but Taran defends with the axe. The two face each other and Taran smiles. Louis tries to strike him again, but Taran defends, being thrown back. Taran says that because of their history together, he was planning to kill him without pain. Then he says that Louis should not forget that 100 years ago, he was recognized by the heroes in the Sacred War. Whether it's experience or skill, he's on a completely different level. And now he will use the technique that gave him the name of Taran the Lumberjack, a skill that cuts anyone in half from 20 meters away. In a flash, Louis has already cut him in half. Belief and asks how he still has ether. Taran's last words were that he really can tell when someone has potential. And with that, all that's left for Louis is a battlefield with everyone dead. 2 years was the time he spent with Taran's group. Ironically, it was also the time he spent in the hospital waiting to die. And now in this world, after 2 years, he's the only one who survived. Nothing is forever, and he knew that eventually his time to leave this group would come. In the end, it was just sooner than he expected. 80 years is the expected lifespan of a healthy human. 3 minutes is the time we live without oxygen. 3 days is the time we live without water. 3 weeks is the time we live without food. And the time that exists only for him is the time he can go without killing someone. To keep living like this, he needs a constant war. Holding his glasses, the guy says that actually, what he needs to keep living is money. He still has 8,600 gold in debt. Louis slams the table, saying he doesn't owe anything after all. He never borrowed money. But the bald guy says the location of his squad was burned down yesterday. Louis says that doesn't make sense. Why would he have to pay for that? But the bald guy tells him to take a look. And there it's written that Taran's squad is responsible for paying any property damages. And since he's the only one alive, it falls on his shoulders. Louis is angry, saying he's never seen such a contract in his life, but the bald guy tells him to take a closer look, puts it in his face, and then Louis remembers when Taran called him to sign the thing. He didn't know what it was, and Taran said at the time that it was just a formality. Louis tries to explain that he didn't know about it, but the bald guy says it's already signed. He says it's a scam and asks what they're going to do if he doesn't pay. But he's already surrounded by blades, and the bald guy says, first, he will lose his mercenary title in all regions, not just this one. Second, there will be a bounty on his head, so all mercenaries will hunt him down too. And since he's an ether user, people will want to pay a lot. The guy then says Louis Delrozy has 1 minute to make his decision. Louis stares, saying 1 minute is more than enough for him. If he really wants, half the guys in there won't leave alive, so they better lower their blades. He was about to draw his when the guy told him to calm down. That's just the worst case scenario. Why don't they resolve things in the mercenary style where people get paid to fight with their lives on the line? There's a mission from Viscount Biora to take out an illegal group in the forest. Many have been sent, and no one has returned alive. Lodi thinks that until yesterday he was an enemy of this guy, but now he's turning into an employee. Seeing the mission, he knows he will have to face someone, and the commission is very high, which is strange since Biora should be out of money. The bald guy says he can refuse, but Louis already clenches his fist, saying he was just thinking. He slammed the door and left while the bald guy says he has 3 days to come back. But he remains thoughtful, saying he feels like he forgot something. Now he remembers in this forest is where the demonic beasts roam, and Louis just cut one. With 588 hours on the clock, he says that bald guy really is a bastard. Even after so long in this fantasy world, it's the first time he's seen a demonic beast up close. Since it's a living creature, did it also extend his lifespan? Louis sees that it increased by 60 hours. Does that really make sense? The first day he cut someone is etched in his mind the way a human was easily killed by either. The person said he was no longer Min Hyuk from the Republic of Korea, and to survive, he would have to go through that. He felt horrible and was scared that this was his destiny to survive. And from now on, Liz to him were nothing more than resources. However, the relief of surviving made him feel good again. But the feeling in the clock didn't last long, so he kept attacking. Killing these demonic beasts reminded him of a dream he had already given up on. He never wanted to live a life like this. In fact, he was forced into it. He wonders if it will be easier now to kill beasts instead of humans. Stepping on the head, he says that when he finishes this task, he will become a monster hunter. Someone says no way he's becoming a monster hunter, that he really doesn't understand things. From atop a rock, a guy says that he barely managed to get into the forest and is already thinking he'll become a hunter that easily. Louis just replies that you can't know without trying and asks who this guy is. The guy says he's a beast hunter who lives in this forest. These demonic beasts are creatures that started appearing in various places on the continent half a century ago. There are various types of mutants among them, and most are extremely aggressive towards people. The strongest can go head-to-head with a knight and even possess abilities. And the guy finishes by saying that people who hunt them are known as beast hunters. However, there are various rules to be won, and number 1 is never hunt a demonic beast in another hunter's territory, even if it's a low-level creature. Smiling, the guy says Louis is lucky he found him. If another hunter had seen this, he'd be screwed. Louis kicks the beast's body and says the guy can keep the creature. He doesn't care about the loot, he just wants to know about a so-called illegal group in this forest. The guy says some people call the forest hunters an illegal group, but he'll have to explain it right because he didn't understand things correctly. Suddenly, Louis is already about to finish him off, saying that unfortunately he's here to complete a mission. But the guy stopped his blade with 2 fingers and said it looks like he's a warrior who came alone and doesn't know how many people have already failed this mission. The guy tells him to put more force into that attack while Louis has no idea how this guy is holding him so easily. Smiling, he says there were many like this in the Sacred War. Louis thinks about that war again that everyone talks about, but he passes with the blade saying that if it's human, he can cut it. But his blade breaks in half. He looks at it in disbelief, especially since he had covered it with ether. Looking back, feeling something coming, the hunter punches him in the stomach, sending him flying through the forest. He hits his back on a rock and spits blood. The hunter comes at him again. Louis tries to draw his blade to defend himself, but the guy punches him long before that. With his fist on Louis' chest, the hunter says it's interesting that he tried to cut him even when he's about to die. His body falls to the ground and the hunter says he got too excited. The hunter now doesn't know what to do with the boy's body. If he leaves him here, he'll be eaten by beasts. At that moment, he sees a cut on his hand and seeing it, smiles. He says it seems they found an interesting guy. Louis hates this world where he has to kill other people. As soon as the battle ends, he walks among the pile of bodies looking for those who are still alive. Because he doesn't like killing humans, suddenly Taran appears saying that's the biggest lie he's ever heard. He says Louis Delrozy is lying to himself, just look at his face. Is that the face of someone who isn't happy? Suddenly, Louis wakes up with a bunch of guys staring at him. He gets up asking where he is, and the hunter tells him to be quiet, he's making too much noise. The guy hits his chest and warns that his wounds haven't healed. Louis remembers the fight while the guy there tells the captain that he was too serious with the boy. Louis asks if he heard the name of the chief, and the guy introduces himself as Gilpod, the executive chief of this city of hunters, and he welcomes him even though he's been there for 3 days. Louis is shocked that he's been unconscious for 3 days, and remembers the bald guy from the city who said that if he didn't return in 3 days, everyone would hunt him. The boy starts sweating cold, but he introduces himself saying he's a warrior. The guy with the earring next to him asks if the boy is really a warrior. The chief tells everyone that he came to attack their city alone. The guys start laughing in his face, saying the dumbest ones are always the bravest. Louis grits his teeth because he was defeated by the guy alone. But he's sure that with enough time, he can ask for the god's power and even kill Gilpod. But is that the best solution? After all, he doesn't even know if he'll be well received by the mercenaries. And if he goes back and they say he's a fugitive. The chief says that it seems he's had quite a messed up life, so why doesn't he become a demon hunter and live in the city? Louis says he's very kind to have beaten him up and now invites him to be a member. The chief explains that nothing is free and he'll have to pay the price for living here by hunting monsters. The creatures are used for cooking as magical ingredients and even for decoration. Louis thinks that if demonic beasts really give him lifespan, it's not a bad offer. The chief says he noticed he seems interested, so he'll talk about the entry test. He lives on the east side of the forest, and even though Louis is incredibly weak, he believes he can win. Louis thinks it doesn't seem difficult, and the chief warns that creature is famous for its hide. He replies that he understands and it will be a great morning exercise, so he'll start now. Already in the forest with the paper in hand, Louis is in disbelief. The monsters are 4 meters tall and walk in groups. Looking at that deformed face staring at him, he wonders who drew that cute creature. An explosion occurs in the forest and Louis is thrown back with his other sword. Now he understands why the guy said these creatures are annoying. Every time he cuts the creatures, they regenerate. And here comes the monkey at him again. Louis is about to be hit, but is confident, saying he knows exactly how to kill such a creature. The monster comes to bite him, but an explosion goes through the middle of its neck. He falls to the ground, saying that's one down. And these two in front of him will die too. He even smiles, saying this way he'll gain time and money. But his expression changes when someone says he won't earn a cent that way. Louis doesn't understand, but the chief smacks his head, calling him an idiot. How are they going to sell a hide that's all cut up? The stone monkeys won't regenerate their hide if you fight them and then cut off their head. You have to skin them all at once. Louis says he understands, so it's not a fight, but a hunt for resources. He really needs to get used to this. The chief says that starting tomorrow, he'll learn to hunt with David, and he better pay attention. 2 weeks later, 2 monkey heads are thrown on the ground. And from behind, Gilpod seems impressed that he managed to bring 2 like that. Louis says he's getting used to his new life there. While he was skinning the creatures, the guy said he was very skilled. Had he been a butcher by any chance? The guys even gave him soup made from the creatures, and Louis was getting used to this place. Except for the food, which was really horrible and hard to get familiar with. But since he started living in this city, he stopped keeping an eye on the life clock. From a window, Gilpod observes and asks what he thinks. The guy with the earring says he's getting along with everyone, but is still hiding his past. He remembers how he was when he arrived and wouldn't even accept a pot of food. It was clear that he wasn't refusing because he didn't like the food, but because he didn't trust anything people offered him. Gilpod asked if he thought they would poison him, and he ate from the same pot just to show he didn't need to worry. What was even stranger was how he slept at night. He was always half standing with his blade next to him. Seeing such a scared boy convinced the chief that he wasn't a spy. The guy then says they're losing contact with the other side of the forest, and the chief says it's a good idea to check it out. The chief informs Louis, who becomes curious, that there is another hunter city. Gilpod says it would be impossible to take care of this forest with just them. He just needs to head west and find the city to see if everyone's okay. Sometime later, Louis is walking through the forest. This is the first time in that world that he feels calm. He no longer has nightmares every night. All he wishes is for this peace to continue forever. However, seeing a body on the ground, he knows things won't stay that way. He recognizes that the guy is dressed as a hunter. Seeing that the cut was made by a blade, he knows it wasn't the work of a monster. He then hears something behind him. He turns, thinking that whoever did this knows how to use a sword, and a battered girl appears. I almost thought there were only men in this world. Frightened, she falls back when he stands up. Louis recognizes the uniform and asks if she is from John's city. She is trembling while he says he was coming to this place. She covers her ears, telling him to stop and wants to know what they did so wrong. First, there were the punitive forces, and now there are knights and even all the warriors. Why are so many people going there? Suddenly someone approaches, saying they found the girl. They ask who the guy next to her is. One of them looks and says it's the guy on the posters. Louis, the famous soul collector who roams the battlefields. They heard that this guy fled after taking a lot of money from the mercenary guild. Facing them, Louis only wants to know if those are going to be their last words. But the guy says there's something else he wants to ask. He places the blade on Louis' neck and asks what he wants written on his tombstone. The guys seem excited because the reward for him is very good. Louis says it seems he's new to threats because he's already cut everyone, warning that when you threaten someone, you first show skill. The bodies of 2 fall to the ground, and from the back, a guy has taken the last woman on the planet hostage. He tells Louis not to move or he will end the only hope of humanity. But Louis throws the blade in his face, saying that's not how you threaten someone. Strangely, Louis seems to let the guys go. The blonde girl grabs him and asks if he's on her side. She begs for help to save the people of the city. But that's when she notices that everyone there is already dead. Unfortunately, she arrived too late. She falls to the ground, saying that all the people there were good. That's when Louis is also shocked by what he is seeing. The cuts show that the blade that passed through was definitely infused with ether. The entire place was sliced in half. That's when he remembered Terran's strike, who used to say that in skill and experience he was much better, and used that technique that cut everything within 20 meters. And in the middle of the battlefield, traces of that power could be seen. Near Viscount Biora's mansion in the Black Forest, someone is crawling on the ground trying to stay alive. A guy with an axe asks why he crawls like an insect. The man was about to say that he was screwed if Gilpod found out when he was cut in half. The guy says he doesn't care about this Gilpod and will kill anyone who goes against the Viscount. At that moment, someone appears behind and informs him that the soldiers they sent were killed by the Soul Collector. The man seems to recognize this, saying that it looks like Louis is close. It will be even better then. He is eager to see that guy's face. Back in Gilpod's village, Louis explained everything that happened, but he explains that the scale of the attack this time was different. They lost a certain war and brought everyone who survived to this place. Gilpod stands up, saying there have been many attacks lately. He just didn't expect them to invade the city. He will have to capture all those guys alive and cause a problem for Viscount Biora. Louis asks why he doesn't just kill them. Gilpod says they are demon beast hunters, not human hunters. Louis says he understands, but he has to be careful because there's someone very powerful on the Knights. And if it's the guy he knows, it's going to be very difficult. Out of nowhere, Gilpod looks at the last woman in the world and says that she will have a role in the battle. She is scared, saying she's never even fought, but he tells her not to worry. Not all roles are combat related. She has a fundamental role. As the last woman in the world, she was used as bait along with Louis. She is trembling, asking if he's sure this is the best role for her. A knight appears and says this bonfire is too obvious, so they should approach with caution. The guy comes and kicks Louis, asking where the rest are. But Louis disassembles him like Lego and already removes the first piece. The guy falls to the ground, telling him to return it. But Louis just tells the girl to go hide in the city now. With swagger, he removes his cape, saying he takes over from here. The soldiers advance, saying there's only one on the front, but Louis warns them that they've fallen right into the trap. The ground beneath them opens up, causing everyone to fall. Some manage to avoid the hole. However, when they look back, a log slams them, throwing all the remaining ones into the hole. Those who dodge try to run in another direction, but are also captured by a trap. Gilpod says the knights are getting stupid these days. He then recognizes the guy with the axe that Louis had mentioned and calls him a bastard. Gilpod kicks one of them in the face, warning that if they cut the rope, that they'll also fall into the hole. He then shouts for Louis, informing him that the guy with the axe is here. The guy recognizes the name but doesn't realize that Louis is right behind him. Louis strikes right at the guy's axe and notices that he's different. He continues exchanging blows while realizing that the way this guy uses ether and handles the axe is similar to Terran. But he's much faster than Terran. Louis asks if he isn't Terran, and the guy finds this question strange, wanting to know how he dares to mix his name with that of that person. Suddenly, one of the monkeys appears screaming from behind, and the guys are startled to see a demonic beast. The soldiers think these monsters are part of their plan and attack one of the soldiers in the front. Gilpod makes an X with his arms and says everyone should stop what they're doing to deal with the beasts. This leaves Louis a bit confused since he's in the middle of the fight, but the beasts attack the city and start destroying everything. Gilpod warns that they'll have to form up and gradually counterattack. Suddenly, one of the monkeys is about to attack Louis' fight with the guy with the axe. Gilpod says they need to be careful, and it's not the time for them to play around. But the beast is about to bite and neither of them backs down. They just stare at the creature, and at the last second, they redirect their blows toward it. The beast takes a punch to the face that sinks it into the ground. Obviously, it was Gilpod, who was confused as to why these stone monkeys had come so far. From the background, someone shouts that the city's barrier is breaking and a bunch of beasts are coming. One of them is about to be bitten by a wolf, and this one, unfortunately, had no salvation. He died. The people wonder how so many high-level beasts are there. Seeing this, Gilpod is confused, wondering what is happening in the center of the forest. Another beast falls to the ground, and the guy with the axe says it's endless. The monster beside him opens its eyes and comes to punch, taking advantage of him being turned. But Louis cuts the head off before it can, saying they should at least kill the beasts. Louis says he'll have to explain so no one dies. He needs to cut the heads off these monkeys or they regenerate. The knight shouts at him, saying he can handle it, and Louis just agrees. Another one is coming to attack the two. Louis warns him not to die because there are things to resolve. Seeing Louis throwing himself into the pile of monsters, the knight thinks the bastard told him not to die. He activates the axe, saying if anyone's going to die, it'll be him, and sends a cut that goes through all the monkeys' heads. The beasts all fall to the ground. The guy says now not even Louis will regenerate. But from the smoke comes a blade that removes the guy's helmet. Louis says if he attacks from behind again, he'll die. The helmet hits the ground. And the guy says it's interesting that the so-called Soul Collector only gives a warning and doesn't kill him. Louis recognizes that he isn't Terran, and the guy says he wants to ask him something. Has his father ever talked about him? Louis asks who his father is. The guy says his name is Marco. and he is Terran's son, the guy Louis recently killed. Louis didn't even know Terran had a son and asks if he's there for revenge. But Marco says he doesn't care about revenge. In fact, killing that old man was a favor, and it seems he doesn't like that the group never mentioned him. When suddenly everything starts shaking, the people in the hold hear a sound coming from underground. A flash of blue light passes among them, and a demonic beast that no one has ever seen appears. The guys are caught by the tentacles and quickly devoured. Gilpod delivers a punch that goes right through the middle. The guy saved by him falls to the ground and asks why he saved him if they are enemies. Gilpod tells him to worry about saving his allies and shut up, and warns that the barrier has already been broken and orders everyone to focus on saving as many people as possible. Louis says he's insane because he's trying to save the enemies who won't help them. But Gilpod says he doesn't need a reason to save a person. That surprises Louis, but he agrees that the guy is right. Gilpod's insistence on saving people is a sense of morality Louis has never seen. In this place, that would be the true embodiment of dignity. But whether in his past life or the current world, he has never seen anyone deserving of that title. Gilpod is the first true knight he has seen. A guy behind says this is ridiculous. It was Marco, saying that apparently their leader doesn't know how to use weak people. He says just look at the fight. Even when saved, they can barely handle some weak beasts, and prepares to strike with his axe, saying the strong must make the right choice. Louis tells him not to use that power or even his allies will be affected. But the guy smiles, saying he knows that very well. He sends the cut, saying it's the only choice, but Louis interrupts his attack and asks if he really is such trash that he doesn't care about his comrades' lives. The guy smiles, saying Louis is being crazy. He never tried to kill his allies. If they die now with these creatures, their lives will be used for a better purpose. Or does the Soul Collector want to talk about sympathy after killing hundreds in wars? A person who even kills allies when necessary. Louis says he's right. He has no idea why Gilpod is saving those who came to kill them, but he won't do that. Then he cuts Marco's arm off, saying that indeed his specialty is killing others, and thanks him, saying he remembered that he was made to cut others. Marco is agonizing, not understanding what Louis did, while Louis looks at the clock, seeing he has 947 hours. He knows this Marco is trash, but at least he is a knight, so he should give about 60 hours. Going with the blade, he says it's nothing personal. It's just that his life will be for a greater good. He swings the blade, but seems to realize that the guy isn't dead yet. He'll have to make another strike when suddenly the entire forest shakes, and from among the trees, a gigantic creature appears. A bear with a red eye stares at everyone from afar. Louis is scared and wonders what kind of giant monster that is, and Gilpod seems to recognize that red bear known as the master of this mountain. For that creature to have left that place, something must be happening. Suddenly, a punch comes and hits Louis in the chest, sending him flying. He thinks this is impossible. Seeing Marco standing, he is sure he pierced his heart. And why does he strangely now have a hand like those stone monkeys? With a vial in his mouth, Marco smiles, asking how Louis dares to call him trash. In a flashback, Marco suffers a cut on his face when he was young and training with his father. Terran said that if it were a real fight, he would already be dead. Marco told his father that he was crazy and would end up killing his own son. But Terran said he was being a coward and to get up immediately, or he would end up dying like trash on the battlefield. Terran had warned. Some time ago, Marco was walking through the city when he overheard some guys saying he was trash, and that he was only Viscount Biora's property because of his father's debt. They said that if the father was bad and died like trash, then the son must be trash too. Viscount Biora then looked down at him, asking if he had acted against all his superiors. He remained silent, and the knights demanded he answer. But Marco said they were the idiots. The knights currently serving the Viscount were ridiculous, dying on the battlefield without doing anything. Worse still, dying to an unknown enemy. Viscount Biora asked if things would have been different if he had been there. Marco told the Viscount that he was more valuable than those guys. Couldn't he see how much more promising he was? Viscount Biora said that if he did this to prove something, he was an idiot. But since he really wanted to prove he was a true warrior, from now on, he would command those troops. Sometime later, Viscount Biora informed him that he only received the leader's position because it was supposed to be his father's. Marco asked if that was the only reason, and Biora said there was one more. Didn't he know that Terran was dead? He had no idea his father had been killed since they had no contact. And Viscount Biora said the only survivor was the Soul Collector known as Louis. Marco smiled, thinking that this guy had brought him many benefits. Seeing this, Viscount Biora said he didn't seem sad about his father's death. In response, he smiled, saying that his father always said those who die are trashed, so he disappeared because he was trash, and they didn't have time to mourn his death. Biora told him to look at a giant rock on the horizon. That was the symbol of the Black Forest where demonic beasts appear. The items there sell for a good price, and they needed a new source of income. However, there was an annoying group in the forest, and Marco understood the request to eliminate them. Biora handed him a vial, saying it was a blessing to ensure success. Looking at it, Marco became curious, and Biora told him it was nothing special, just to use it when facing someone very powerful. The vial falls to the ground, and he runs towards Louis. Now with his transformed arm, he punches directly at Louis' blade, and the impact pushes everything to the sides. As he continues striking, he asks where Louis' soul collector spirit is. Is he only capable of defending himself? He hears another blow and Louis is thrown back. As soon as he looks up, the guy is coming again. He activates a red lightning bolt in his arm and tells Louis to die. An explosion occurs in the forest, but someone blocked it. It was Gilpod, apologizing for having to get involved. He delivers a punch that sends Marco flying, and Louis thanks him for the help but says he can handle it. Gilpod says there's no need for him to act like that. He punches him in the stomach and apologizes, saying that for now, he isn't a demon beast hunter. Some of the hunters flee through the forest while saying that Biora's knights ran away, and Pennell also runs with Louis in his arms. They know Louis will be angry when he wakes up and finds out, but this is something they can't let an outsider face. Gilpod says that is the fate they will all face. If that creature descends the mountain, it will be a terrible disaster. He shouts to everyone that even if they die there, at least they will gain time for the civilians to escape. Half a century ago, Chaos, the god of demons, invaded this continent with his army. All races joined forces to fight them, and that was known as the Sacred War. At that time, various species formed alliances, leading to victory. However, as a result of the war, other species besides humans went extinct. Since then, unknown beasts have started appearing all over the continent. Emperor Troyson, who was the person who helped the most in the Sacred War, said it would be the responsibility of the aristocrats to deal with the beasts. Many knights volunteered to deal with the beasts wherever they appeared. To be more precise, they were actually forced to volunteer. Gilpod asked if the aristocrats would be held accountable because a bunch of young knights were being sent. He questioned if that was the true wish of the emperor, and the priest asked if Gilpod would do the knight's work then. The emperor did not answer either question, remaining silent. Since that day, Gilpod has lived in this forest with no regrets. Even if he dies today, he will take one of the greatest with him. And with that, the battle between the demonic beasts and the hunters began. They seemed to be managing to deal with the wolves, but Gilpod noticed that the number doesn't seem to decrease. He looked at the red bear on the horizon and his allies just below the creatures, feeling an indescribable energy coming from there. It was the energy of the mountain commander emanating from his chest. Those attacking wolves had the same energy, albeit weaker. Gilpod easily destroyed everything. Even the beasts started to fear him. With a fist of light, all the monsters were shattered. He was sure that the reason for so many demonic creatures was him, the bear, and he stood face to face with it, preparing a punch and saying he didn't know where this energy came from, but he delivered the blow to the chest, saying he would find out. Amidst the creature's flesh, a giant red crystal could be seen. Gilpod didn't know what it was, but if the beast was guarding it so fervently, it needed to be destroyed. However, a blinding light came from the crystal and an explosion occurred in the forest. From afar, Pennell was carrying Louis, who was about to wake up. He stood up dizzy, asking where he was being taken, and questioned Pennell about where Gilpod was. The cook was impressed that he was already standing and explained to him that the creature was the red bear. There was a type of monster that collected ether and a stone in its own chest. The problem was that one as big as that was already considered a catastrophe. That's why Gilpod asked him to retreat, but Louis said that was nonsense. He had to help Gilpod. But Pennell said nothing. Trembling, he asked Louis to at least save the people in the forest and inform the Empire about this. For this situation, they already had a plan. He was about to say something when he was cut off. Blood splashed on Louis and he couldn't believe what had happened. From behind, he could see a monkey's hand. Louis was shocked and it was Marco, saying that Louis' face looked beautiful with that expression and that the weak are destined to be consumed by the strong. Pennell fell into Louis' arms, telling him to flee, that at least he had to survive. Louis laid him down and told Marco that indeed the weak need to be consumed by the strong. He drew his dagger and finished Pennell, saying he would never forget the sacrifice. Marco smiled, calling Louis a psychopath for killing his own ally like that. But he was startled when something happened as Louis said he was just putting Pennell to rest. Louis had plunged the god of war's dagger into Marco's chest. Marco didn't understand what was happening, but he was already being cut in half with Louis telling him not to hate him. He was just using the life of the weaker. Split in half and with a crater opened, Marco's body fell to the ground. Seeing him fall, Louis realized his body wouldn't regenerate. Louis noticed that the time he received and the abilities reminded him of the monkey. He just found it strange that a human had such power. But what was important was how to deal with that giant beast now. He told Pennell that only later would he be able to leave this place, and then he headed towards the monster, thinking that now he carried Pennell's life with him, and he couldn't stop there. Gilpod had been thrown back. He knew he had come very close, but the bear had completely regenerated, and he began to think it was invincible. The bear roared and Gilpod ordered everyone to attack together. All the hunters advanced towards the bear, but when they punched the beast, their arms got stuck and embedded. And from the monster's own skin, a mouth emerged and finished them off. Gilpod told them to be careful because the beast was undergoing a mutation. When you looked up, it had turned into a demonic monster full of fleshy bubbles. Something unrecognizable with a bunch of tentacles attacked the hunters. They had no way to defend themselves and began to be devoured. Gilpod remembered something similar in the Sacred War, an aura that brought catastrophe, and you could feel it at the center of that beast. It was impossible to defeat this monster if that wasn't destroyed. He kept advancing, dodging the attacks, but one of them hit the side of his head. Gilpod tells them to get out of the way. He leaps through all the beasts, landing a punch on the bear's chin. Once again, he is face to face with the exposed crystal. He can't waste any time, so with this attack, he will finish it off. The punch lands squarely on the crystal, but Gilpod is shocked. The attack carried the maximum power he could exert, but it did absolutely nothing. And worse, the beast is starting to regenerate. He grabs the monster's skin to keep the crystal exposed. This is his only chance. He starts headbutting, thinking he needs to find a way to destroy it. He has no weapon or ether, so he keeps headbutting, begging for the crystal to be destroyed. However, he begins to lose strength, wondering if this is the end. He isn't afraid of death, it's just that if they don't win here, he knows how many lives will be lost in the city. Gilpod didn't know what to do when he heard someone say they heard a loud noise. It was Louis carrying the God of War's dagger. Gilpod asked how he was there, and Louis just said he was going to destroy everything at once. Preparing for the attack, he asked the God of War to change the weapon. He requested the double blade, and 12 hours were taken from his lifespan. Gilpod couldn't believe what he was seeing. He knew it wasn't either. That was the power of the God of War, Wom. Each second the blade was in combat cost Louis hours of his life. But with one cut, the crystal was split in half, and the entire beast was cleaved. The explosion swept through the forest, and everyone who had been consumed by the creature fell to the ground, not understanding what happened. Louis then said he wanted to ask Gilpod something. Would he have died if he hadn't come to save him? Why did he do something so risky? He could have just left Viscount Biora to deal with it. Gilpod put his hand on his head, saying he thought Louis would ask something else. It's just that, as a demon hunter, it's his job to hunt demons. How could he leave one of the biggest for someone else? Louis smiled, saying he understood. At that moment, Gilpod asked why he came back then, since it really wasn't his business. Louis asked what he meant by it not being his business. Why would he leave one of the biggest for someone else? After all, he gained 1,500 hours just from that beast. Gilpod was surprised that Louis said he wouldn't ignore that as a demon hunter, but strangely he laughed in Louis' face, saying he wasn't a demon hunter with such poor skills. What kind of hunter leaves no remains of the beast? Louis then asked him to teach him how it's done, and Gilpod said that if he was so insistent, starting tomorrow, he would show him how a true hunter fights. Louis said he hoped they would get along and then collapse on the ground. Gilpod asked something, but Louis just said he wasn't feeling well. That's the price for using the power of the God of War, but he found it strange that he was hearing a beeping sound. And a message from the system notified him that he could no longer use the protection of the god Lam. Elsewhere, a blonde guy travels, saying he doesn't want to work. He tells the person next to him that the Black Forest is safe as far as he's heard. So why are they coming here? The second to last woman in the world tells him to be careful what he says, because this forest is only protected because of the mountains surrounding it. If what they think happened actually happened, a huge problem is coming. The blonde guy says he knows very well and asks her to agree with him a little, but she says that's not possible. He then explains that he only says that to calm himself a bit because he knows very well what happens if a seal breaks. It would release all the magical power that corrodes and corrupts the land, making it a place of death. Holding his nose and saying that the smell of it is the worst part. The girl says if that's the case, he won't vomit, and he asks what she's talking about. She explains that it seems the situation has already been resolved. He asks why they went there then if the place is so calm. That's the northern part of Troyden Forest, but it seems fine. He smiles, saying it looks like they found a very interesting situation. Back with Louis, he's sitting on a beast, saying he's been hunting all day and only found one. Since that last war, the situation in the area has changed a lot. It seems the reason for so many monsters lately was because of the bear. However, the other much more serious problem is the system notifying that he can no longer use Walm's power. Gilpod appears and asks why Louis is sitting and resting. With an angry face, he says Louis keeps asking to learn but lacks determination. Louis smiles, saying the old man is very excited, while thinking that now, without the power of the god Lam, he will have to learn to fight with Ether. That incident with the giant beast was resolved, but it was only possible because of sacrifices. His comrades were all buried near the village and a simple farewell was given. Biora's soldiers were buried next to them, and Gilpod said he didn't think they would like that. But the guy with the earrings said they must be happy to rest. Gilpod smiled, saying that if that's the case, he would soon join them in rest. Louis went to Pennell's grave and asked that he could cook in his next life. Since then, he's been training with Gilpod, who keeps activating his fist, stating he can only concentrate ether in specific regions instead of filling his entire body. Punching Louis, he says it hurts so much because he concentrates the ether well. However, in the middle of the fight, he always asked when Louis would tell him how he used the god's power. What he saw the day they killed the monster was clearly God of War Lam. Louis tried to brush it off, saying he saw wrong and took a hit in the stomach. Gilpod said he was very clever, but was sure he had a reason not to say. Our protagonist knew it would be too difficult to explain that he was a person from another world with a cistern window. After getting beaten, he pointed behind, saying it was her turn. A girl appeared, saying her name was Belle. Louis told Gilpod to be careful because she was fierce, and Gilpod wondered why he accepted her. Then he remembered that after the war, she emerged from the chaos covered in blood. He had no idea how she survived that. She went to Louis and thanked him, and he asked what kind of joke that was. Belle kept thanking him, and he asked what nonsense she was talking about, saying that was called respect. Louis sat by the tree, and Gilpod said they would learn about either again. She wanted to know when they would use the blade, but he said they would start with the basics. Lying by the tree, Louis thought that reminded him of the last time. Suddenly, someone appeared saying Gilpod was an old man but looked very well. Gilpod turned, asking why he was there. The blonde guy said he was on his way to another place and just stopped by to visit. But Gilpod said that was a lie and told Louis to say hi to them. They were hunters from the main groups. Seeing them, Louis was confused. They didn't seem to carry any weapons, so how did they get there? Gilpod then asked what brought them there, and the blonde guy said it was nothing much. He just wanted to know if there was someone there who used the power of a god. Immediately, Gilpod was startled and asked what he meant by that. But the blonde guy snapped his fingers, saying that person was apparently there. The three were surrounded by a magic circle, and Louis realized it was a restraining spell. The blonde guy apologized, saying unfortunately, it was a very important task. Gilpod was angry, but the blonde guy said he would explain quickly. Had he seen a giant stone that looked like a crystal? It was called a sealing stone, and that stone could only be cut by the power of a god, but someone destroyed it. If it's not a god's power, then it must be one of those pagans, and they have to deal with it. Gilpod said he knew a lot about the thing only being destroyed by the power of a god. Apparently, it wasn't the first time, was it? The traveler said it happened many times, and Gilpod wanted to know why no one was informed. If they knew that it could only be destroyed by a god's power, they wouldn't have sacrificed themselves. The blonde guy crossed his arms, saying that's why they don't tell anyone. How would they know the location of the monsters then? Hearing the word location makes Gilpod laugh. The blonde guy thanks him for understanding, saying it's really hard to find the products that come from those creatures. When he starts to say something about mutual benefits, Gilpod is already about to land a punch on his face. The punch creates a flash of light, but something protects the blonde guy. Finally, a well-fed girl appeared. She tells Teshua to think more about what he says. The blonde guy can't believe she blocked his blade so easily. She is pushed back, and Gilpod notices her blade is made of ether. He knows there is only one family in the Empire that can do that and says she must be from the Chill's family of ice. Wave Ice family, but she seems warm. She says they don't like the name they are given, the Lazy Blade. Gilpod laughs, saying it seems he's making the junior uncomfortable. He goes at her, saying he wants to see what she's capable of. He breaks her blade with a punch. The family that uses ether solidification to create temporary weapons at the cost of freedom of movement. Chills of Ice. He grabs another blade and breaks it again, telling her to come at him with everything, because he knows there is a limit to how many she can make. But she begins a conjuration, summoning several blades behind her. Gilpod is startled, and an explosion occurs in the forest. With a blade at his neck, she says it seems he knows the weaknesses. But while he's been here with the hunters, she's been sharpening herself little by little. And now he better talk about the man who can use the power of a god. He looks back, saying she asks too many questions, and he won't speak. She then raises her sword, saying she has something to do apparently. She didn't want to use aggressive methods, but she'll have to cut off an arm to make him talk. Suddenly, Louis shouts for her to wait and tells her to leave a like on this video to help Mamoru make juicy content for his brothers, activate the cheeky little bell, and I'm out.